I remember when I was first getting started in the traveling lifestyle, I was trying to figure out where to camp and how the public land thing worked, and I found a spot in a national forest that looked pretty good, and the temperatures were pretty good that time of year. And so there was a little fire ring. I pull in, I decide this is where I'm gonna camp. I start getting my chairs out of my van, I start setting my awning up, you know, hammering the stakes in for the post for the awning, just getting everything going. And this guy comes over and he says, "Hey man, I saw you, I'm camped right up on the hill. I wanted to come over and introduce myself and welcome you to the area." And I said, "Hey, thanks a lot, I really appreciate that." He said, "By the way, this Friday night I'm gonna be having a little shindig in my camp and you're invited." He said, "We'll have a campfire and there'll be some drinking and some dancing, and who knows, maybe by the end of the night you might even get lucky." And I said, "Wow, that sounds pretty good. Count me in. What should I wear to something like that?" And he said, "It doesn't matter, it's just gonna be you and me." Today, we're talking more power stations. I don't know why I'm doing that. Namely, we're gonna talk about the Jackery 500. Now, if you've been researching little power stations, you've probably seen reviews on the Jackery 500. Here we go with another review for the Jackery 500. Jackery, Jackery, Jackery. That's all we see on these off-grid channels. And here we go again with more of it. But there's a reason that I wanted to review this, because the van build's coming up and I want to look at everything. You know, I'm always getting requests for something that'll run a CPAP machine. And I've always been apprehensive because, first of all, I don't have a CPAP machine and I don't know exactly the little nuances of how it works on those things. I know that they have humidifiers and heaters and you can turn that part off and extend the life of the CPAP machine's functions with less power on smaller units. But you know, I just know what I can research from you guys in the comments and what I can find online about CPAP machines. Well, this one is claiming that it can run a CPAP machine for about 8 hours with all the bells and whistles activated. I haven't tested it, and there's some comments online where folks that do use them are saying that that's what they can do. I just want to let you know I haven't tested it. What we have to do is look at how many amps it pulls, how many watts it pulls, and what this thing at full charge can do. Now this one has 518 watt hours and 24 amp hours. The DC input is 12 to 30 volts at 3.5 amps, 100 watts max, and the AC output is 110. It's a pure sine wave, and it'll put out 4.5 amps. So if you got a little 4.5 amp angle grinder you want to run on this thing, according to the specs on it, it can run it. You've got one 120 volt AC plug for it that is 500 watts continuous, 1000 watts max. If you plug something into it, it has a little surge at the beginning. You know, it'll get up to 1000 watts. And then 500 watts continuous. You have 3 USB ports that are 2.4 amp. You've got a cigarette lighter socket if you want to use that. And you've got 2 DC outputs. That's where you plug your CPAP machine. And you've got one input that takes 3 different types of inputs. It takes a cigarette lighter input, it takes a solar panel input, and it takes a wall outlet input, 110, all on the same one. And all the cords for this are provided with the unit when it comes in the mail. I wanted to see from completely zero, it was at 1%, how we would fare with the Jackery proprietary solar panel that comes with. Now, you can get other solar panels that are compatible with this, but Jackery went ahead and sent me out the 100 watt fold-up panel that they use, and so I put it to the test. I discharged it all the way, and I stuck it out here in this Arizona sun, kind of tucked this underneath the panel so it wouldn't get direct sunlight, and tested it for 1 day. Let's see how everything shook out. Good morning everyone, Jamie here from the Enigmatic Pneumatics YouTube channel, and as you can see from the background, I have now left the mountains, the Ponderosa Pines, and I'm in the desert of Lake Havasu City. The sun has just come up over the hillside here. I'm going to get a solar panel out and I'm going to test a Jackery Explorer 500. In a previous video I just did with the Jackery and Enkyo, I wasn't able to discharge them. Well, This time I'm not going to let you down, and I do actually have 100 watt. I have a 100 watt panel and an 80 watt panel. Jackery sent me the 100 watt panel that they sell. So it's their proprietary panel, but it can also be used on other things. The big challenge with the bigger portable power stations is having all that power is great, but if there's not a way for us to recharge it once it's discharged, we're kind of dead in the water. So the bigger the battery, the more power it's going to take to recharge it every day. Why do we care about a little bit bigger unit this time? Why not just go with portable and small, and you know, the smaller the better in some cases? Well, for years I've had folks ask me, can this run a CPAP machine? And I believe this one will go ahead and run your CPAP machine full blown. It's a pure sine wave inverter. We've got the 100 watt panel from Jackery to see how it's going to recharge. And before I started this video, I discharged the battery all the way on it. So let me just go grab that stuff. The sun just popped over the hill. I'm going to set it all up and get it charging and then head to the gym. Let's see what we come up with on this. If you are in your van or small vehicle and you're not powering a refrigerator or a Fantastic or a Max fan all day long, this unit's going to provide quite a bit of power for you. Let's go ahead and get it oriented in the sun. It looks like, check this out, see how it folds back? That allows you to catch the curve of the sun over the course of the day. It's always going to be better if you pick it up and move it, you know, every few hours as the sun moves. But with this one, we can curve it a little bit, so that's kind of a nice feature. Let's go ahead, I'm going to turn on the display to show you. Here we are, 1% on the battery. So let's say we ran all night long, we ran our CPAP machine, we watched some TV, we had our cell phone charging on it, maybe we mixed up some stuff in a little bullet blender, and now we're down to 1% and the sun just came over the hill. Let's see how this thing will charge. It's telling me that it's pulling in 67 watts. So what I can do, since it's giving me how many watts it's pulling in, is I can set this in a way where I can see the reading and adjust the panels to get it dialed in towards just as close as I can, or the highest I can get it. We'll call it peaking the solar panel. So let's do that. It looks like 65 watts is the maximum I can get out of it, and I know the sun's gonna move this way, so I'm gonna kind of orient the panels. I'm taking off, so I'll be gone for a little while. I want to set the Jackery in the shade behind it so it's not in the direct sunlight. The time is 8:25. So we'll mark that. We just woke up. We had our battery down to 1%. We ran things on it all night long. The sun just came up. We're gonna put our panel out and see how this thing charges over the course of the day to see what kind of power we'll have by the end of the day. Let's check it out. Well, I will be darned. I really will. I just got back from town. Let's look at the time. I believe we started at 8:30. It's now 1:10, almost 5 hours, 4.5 plus hours. You can see, I want to show, I'm gonna put the camera in the sun, but I want you to see that, well, you can see the shadow. We're no longer lined up with the panels. That's why if we were hanging around our rig doing this, we'd want to move the panels with the sun. But just like right now how it is, we are looking at 41% and 42 watts. Now eventually I'm gonna have to pull these panels back some because there's gonna be a tall shadow cast by the bus. The sun kind of goes over to the other side of the bus. So I'll pull them out a little bit and reorient them to get the most out of the sun. The panel was showing 42 watts is what it was pulling in off the 100 watt panel. And that didn't make sense to me that the sun wasn't perfectly aligned with it. And when I put it back over here, it was still just showing that 42 watts. So I unplugged the solar panel from the Jackery and plugged it back in, and it jumped up to 62 watts. It looks like it just wants to stay at 62 watts. We've got plenty of day left. It's only 1:15. I believe it gets dark around here at 6 o'clock this time of year. So we've got some more charging to do. Why would you want this size? Why would you want to have to lug around something that's a little over 13 pounds over something that's around 5 pounds? Well, the reason for that is you're going to get more power. You're going to get more clean power out of a pure sine wave 110 plug, and more power for longer for your handheld electronics. What I see this being good for is if you are someone who you just go out for 2 or 3 days at a time, but you live in a house and you can plug this in and top it up before you leave. I wouldn't try to run a refrigerator or a fantastic fan or a max fan, but if you're just running your handheld electronics, your laptop, and a CPAP machine, if you have one, I believe this thing will be able to do the job. Now, you're still going to have to charge it over, if you use it over 8 hours on the CPAP machine. That's pretty much going to tap this thing out with all the bells and whistles running at the same time. But with that 100 watt panel, you should be okay to catch, if you're getting sun, to catch a lot of power to power this thing back up as you go. You may not deplete it every day. You may turn your humidifier and your heater off on your CPAP machine, so this thing's just barely sipping. Now another thing about this unit is if it's only pulling 10 watts, you've got something plugged in that's only using 10 watts, and it'll tell you right here on the display how many watts it's using, so you got that going for you. It's going to shut off after 6 hours. If that doesn't work for you, then plug something else in so it's pulling more than 10 watts, and that 6 hour trigger won't kick in. What about running a fantastic or a max fan with this thing? It'll run it, but it's not going to run it very long. One of the things that took me a while to realize